Well, good morning, everybody. This is the July episode of Wise Women and Good Men. This year, our focus is on leaders, on leadership, and I am thrilled that we have two female, first-time females in these positions, CEOs, Karen Hofmann, ArtCenter College of Design, and Jules Rooke, CEO of Descanso Gardens. So each of them is willing to do a brief self bio. So take it away, Jules. How about you first?
Okay, great. Thank you. Briefly, I grew up in the Pasadena area, but I started my career off in public accounting. I worked for Deloitte and Touche, and my background was financial institutions and construction. As I started having a family, I decided to make a transition to the nonprofit world, where I worked at a private school where they had a campus expansion as part of the project. What lured me there. And then 18 years ago, I was hired at Descanso Gardens, and at that time, I was hired to be the CFO. And then I moved into the chief operations role. And then 9 years ago, I was named the CEO of Descanso Gardens.
Well, thank you. And Karen, what about you?
Well, thanks, Diana, for having us. So, Jules, what's really great is I grew up with Descanso Gardens in my
Mm.
backyard. So I grew up in the Montrose area and had a big part of JPL's. Both my parents worked at JPL. So, Art Center College of Design was always that in that periphery. I actually studied psychology in my first degree at Cal State Northridge, and then found design a little bit later in life. So I did study at Art Center in product design, and in the late 90s, I graduated from Art Center and went into automotive design for several years. Came back to Art Center in 2002 and started teaching mostly in the industrial design area, and had the privilege to develop a couple of labs. And then I found myself moving into administration. So I was the chair of the product design department for about 10 years, and then continued to move towards the administrative side and served as provost, which oversees all the academic areas of the college from 2018 till 2022. And then found myself in this position, which I never would have dreamed of as a younger student there at Art Center. But in 2022, I was named the president of Art Center. So I'm going on almost 4 years in this role.
Wow, time flies.
It
So
does.
for me, excuse me, as a baby boomer professional woman, I am just thrilled to have both of you here because, as I was going, I'm fond of saying I had a job at the major Southern California utility. I made a meteoric rise to the glass ceiling. So I started as an employment lawyer, had several jobs, and was elected corporate secretary. There were 18 officers, 17 men and me, but I just kind of sat there. That was the role at which they viewed me. So to see women achieving the pinnacle of success in each of their organizations is just so thrilling for me. So Karen, you gave us some of your background, but let's take a deeper dive. What what inspired you or motivated you to move from the into administration? Because leading people is a totally different skill set. In my own business, I find that a lot of people who are good individual contributors are promoted into management and don't necessarily have the skill set. So tell us about that. And then I'll have a slightly different take on it with Jules. Well, both of you were in the position where you were at your institutions and there were nationwide searches for your predecessors who always ended up being men. And yet somebody said along the line, hey, wait a second, we have some fantastic people here. But take it away, Karen.
Sure. I think, a lot of what I attribute, I think, my approach in life, I have always been sort of a team sport kid. I grew up playing soccer when there was no girls' soccer team, so I ended up playing with a lot of boys. So I had, I guess, a natural tendency to sort of be in, environments where there was a lot of boys, men, growing up. And so I guess I didn't have a whole lot of fear of jumping into environments that were sort of traditionally male dominated. So I think there was an opportunity specific to my trajectory at Art Center, which really I attribute to the ability to, as you said, Diana, fast track in a way. I was very lucky to have been in a position working in automotive design in Michigan to be supported to come back out to California, specifically to Pasadena, to sponsor projects for that company in Michigan, Johnson Controls Automotive Systems Group, and was very much given a lot of responsibility to run a small studio while engaging with Art Center. And I think that kind of sort of the team sport sort of combination, and I did play team sports my whole life, kind of fed into, I think, my approach on how I lead.
Mm.
So I'm always been very people oriented, much more so than anything else. And I think there is a little bit of a difference there. I know we're going to talk more about that, but I feel that that really set myself up for just what I enjoy doing the most is working with people.
Great, thank you. Jules, what about you?
You know, I think being at Descanso Gardens, I had the very good fortune of working for David Brown. And there's a connection between Karen and I in so many ways. Not only did she grow up with Descanso in her backyard, but David Brown had been the president of the Art Center when he was a student there. So we're very connected.
Yeah.
But when I was hired to be the CFO, which was very much like, okay, you're in your office, you're working on financial statements, you are interacting with the board. But David Brown saw something in me that I didn't even necessarily see myself. And he promoted me out of that CFO role into operations and doing
Mm.
fundraising. And so he wasn't just literally the best boss I've ever had. He was a marvelous mentor. In that I really feel that 15 years ago, I changed my career path completely. Um, and so the nationwide search, it's true, I'd been in the role for a long time when David retired. And I had had a lot of successes here at Descanso as the chief operations officer. We had really moved the needle on our financial position, on fundraising, on projects here. And so when they first told me they were going to do a nationwide search, I was like, what? I mean, really? You got to pick me. And for a minute I just said, if you don't pick me, I can't stay here because I know that I'm the person for this job. But I attacked that nationwide search like I wasn't going to get the job. And I participated in a way like that I just definitely wanted the job. I deserved the job. I'm very grateful that they did that search because there was never a question once I was given the position, like, was it just like easier to give Jules the job? They did the whole search thing. It took them 9 months. So I am very grateful that they went that route. But I have to say, for a moment, I was a little like, really?
Jules, I gotta jump in because we share that. Both of us had great mentors, and I would say that, the former chair of product design, the late Martin Smith, who really started the product design department at Art Center, he really mentored me a lot like how David mentored you. And I can picture David mentoring you because, David was, of course, my president, and really inspired me in many ways, a little more indirectly, of course. But it was a international search, I think, the national search for the product design chair role. Exact same thing. At first, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I've been actually doing the work. I was interim chair. But really, thank goodness that process was in place because it legitimized us, right? That it wasn't just, your mentor training you to jump into this work. It was really an earned position.
There's a couple of things that each of you said that I think is so important. Jules, I love the fact that you said, and you echoed it too, Karen. Wow, are you kidding me? I deserve this job. But you also said, if I don't get this job, I can't stay here. I'm going to leave. And I love the common to me, a common trait among all leaders is a willingness to wrest control of the decision making back to yourself. It's not about, what you think of me, it's what I think of myself and what I have to offer. And, Karen, you talked about how the process really legitimized you, which is also important. And yet, for me, it's still like, why do we have to continue to legitimize ourselves? Why can't we be treated equally? And anyway, I know we're going to go into greater detail about that. But if you believe that women lead differently, what would you say that each of you do that's different from a male counterpart? And how about Jules? Why don't you take it away? And then we'll
Yes. And I'm grateful that you gave me this question in advance, but it's still a very, very hard question for me to answer because I've looked back to think about the people that I've worked for. And I've worked for both men and women. And I've had the good fortune of working for some really terrific leaders, which is where I think I learned how to lead. When I think about myself, this applies to me, and I don't want to say that this is all women, but
Right.
one of the things that I think that I'm different with compared to a man is I don't delegate as much as like David Brown did, as an example. And it's actually something that I am trying to do more of. But I just think for me as a woman, and it's work life, home life, all of it, I don't necessarily ask for help. Like I'll just do it.
Hmm.
But I don't know with leadership characteristics, when I think about the leaders I've worked for, for me, gender didn't really play a role in working for fantastic people. I've worked for both fantastic men, fantastic women. And when I was comparing the traits of those leaders, I don't have like a lot of differences. One of the common themes is they were both fabulous, fabulous communicators. Like communication is key.
Yes, that's
So
really
that's not really completely an answer. It's a really hard question, Diana.
that's interesting. I'd love to talk to you about delegation offline because that really is a key leadership. But also, I mean, to me, it's so interesting that you started in the financial field because many people in the financial field really are loners, for lack of a better way of describing it.
It's
And
true.
and you talk about David Brown seeing characteristics and traits in you and offering you opportunities to expand. By the way, David passed away, as we know, but his wife, Judy, or Judith Brown, and I served on the YWCA board together. She's a big feminist, and they have daughters. And so I'm wondering, I know in my own personal life, my father once, was fairly traditional. But once he started watching my career and the hurdles that I had to overcome, he sort of switched along the way. So I'm thinking David had the influence both of Judy and his daughters, who I believe are Westridge Girls, which is um, an all girls school that really raises leaders. And I'm chuckling because one of my friends calls it the bitch school. Anyway,
David served on that Westridge board,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I do think that he's inspired me to think about how to train up the next generation, like of my replacement. Like at some point, I'm
Right.
going to retire, and so when I am thinking about who I work with, I have two officers that report into me. Like I am doing a lot of the things that he did with me, but yet I still hold on to more work than he did. He was very good at delegating.
That means you got a lot of the work, is what it sounds like to
But
me.
also it's what enabled me to be successful, truthfully. Like
Uh-huh.
allowing me to be the person to take on specific projects is what allowed me to be ready for the role,
Yeah.
truthfully.
So, Karen, what about you? If you think there are differences, what would you ascribe to female leadership?
Yeah, well, I do again share very similar I think experiences that Jules you've had, which I was blessed to have great women and great men as bosses and mentors over the years, um, I think we're doers. And I agree. I think I attribute sort of the ability that and the opportunities and abilities to sort of see it through, to step into these leadership roles. I really do attribute to the fact of having that sort of tenacity of like and confidence of like, even if I get it wrong, I'm going to
Mhm.
go for it, because my heart, my soul tells me I need to do this. And that was something that really I give my parents a lot of credit for instilling as a young kid. Um, my dad especially was very much like, you can do anything kind of mindset. And so I was very blessed to have that um, sort of approach to life. And then having those mentors in my professional career to also, really push me in that direction with confidence. So I do think there is something about kind of growing up that way, where you have a sense of ownership and pride of your work. And delegation is a tough thing to do because we're the doers. We do it all.
That's
And even today, it's something my own team tells me, you don't need to do that anymore. I'll do that for you. Um, I still like to design my own presentations, and my team's like, you got people to do that for you, you know? So I think maybe if I was to, when I look back, um, there is this, it's kind of an overused word right now, but I think empathy is,
yeah.
I see women in general having a little more empathetic approach overall to leading. And I think maybe there is, with that comes a lot more sort of deliberation. Yes, we make decisions. Some decisions we have to make as quickly as we can. Others take a little more time. And we deliberate, I think, a little bit more than our male counterparts do, at least in my experience of, my bosses, specifically at Art Center, which were all great leaders, really made decisions that I think could have been um, maybe thought through a little bit more. And then once they make that decision, they just keep going. Whereas
Oh,
I
yeah.
I'll tend to look back and say, could I've done that a little more analytical in a way of what my track record has been.
Interesting. I mean, we all make mistakes. It's not if we make mistakes, it's how we handle them.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say, and I think I probably observed that as well, that it's scary, but women are more willing to try something. And if it doesn't work out, say, hey, that didn't work out. Let's try this. We did this. Let's try the other thing.
Yeah.
So I am sure, and I know this from feedback that I've received, that there are a lot of women who are listening to this because they aspire to be presidents or CEOs of whatever organization. And I think each of you has talked about characteristics, but if you were to mentor a listener and you were to offer her or him advice about what to do to make it to the top, if that's what they want to do, what would you say? So let's flip it and do Karen and then Jules.
Uh, I always say you've got it. If your heart and soul is 100%, you got to go for it. You got to keep following your gut, no matter what. And so that I always see as a foundation of you're on the right path if those boxes are checking, heart and soul. I think, I've been privileged to be in a position where that aligned with the opportunities that were put in front of me, and that also includes obviously financial reward, to not have to worry too much, once you get into that corporate world, um, that you keep going. It doesn't make I think Jules, I'm sure you've had this experience too. I've had other opportunities that are outside of higher education, outside of nonprofit, and a lot of my counterparts that went really heavy corporate and industry driven are making probably twice as much as I am. But
Mhm.
I think just you can't be driven by the dollars if you have the opportunity to not have to make those choices, first and foremost. And then secondly, I'd say that as you are in the, director level, that sort of that you're starting your leadership career, I always kept a sort of a journal, and I always kept a sort of a way of sort of creating aspiration for myself. And I also look to, like, who are those people out there that are doing the work that I want to do? And I think really sort of mentally bridging, who I saw doing what they were doing, and starting to really reach out to them and map. So I think mentorship is absolutely essential, as far as, learning how to lead.
Well, one of the things that, Jules, that you said, and I know this impacted me and probably impacts a lot of other parents, largely women, although I think there's more of a equal distribution of work with children. I see my son-in-law very devoted to my two granddaughters, as an example. You talked about uh, essentially being in a more corporate structure where you really had to put the hours in, and you kind of rifle shot in. And because of my family, I moved into this different arena. So if you can weave that into whatever advice you would be giving, I think that would be terrific. And
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really interesting because that recruiter call that I received when I was at Obayashi America, working a ton of hours, I thought, okay, nonprofit, right? That's going to be balanced. But what I have found to be true in the 3 nonprofit jobs I've had, Descanso being the longest standing job, is that they universally, and maybe it's not true for Karen, but I bet it's true, they they struggle with the budget. And so you land up doing more in your role, and you're landing up doing almost as many hours. But here's the difference, and it is related to my answer, which is being in a field that is passionate, passionate, passionate for you. Because from the second I got the job at Descanso Gardens, I was very passionate. The number of hours I put in is probably the same as when I was at corporate, when I was at Deloitte. However, there are moments where it doesn't even feel like a job. Like I wake up and say, how have I been so blessed to be at Descanso Gardens in all 3 of my roles? And I think that when people are thinking about wanting to be in a leadership role, it's very, very important for people to have a passion for what they are doing, because being a leader is hard. I mean, there are so many hard days. And so you have to love what you're doing. Otherwise, it's just a slog, right? Like you have to be like, yes, I am getting up today and there's going to be a hard moment, but I am very passionate about Descanso Gardens. I'm very committed to this organization. And so it doesn't feel hard. I think the other thing is, in fact, working for people who will mentor you. Like I have taken on that role with people because I was fortunate to see that. But if somebody is not working for somebody who is inclined to be a mentor, that doesn't mean you can't ask for mentorship. So if you're aspiring to be a
right.
leader, I think
Yes.
it's important for us to, like, I really would like to have you mentor me. I've had people ask me that before, and first of all, it is incredibly flattering, and I never have a problem doing that. But I think just asking for mentorship in what other organization you're in, whether it be corporate or nonprofit, but passion has to be at the base of it. Because
Yes.
I spend more hours working than I do vacationing, so I like it.
Yep.
I think that's true of the overall American worker, not so much in Europe. Um, I liked what you said about people coming into you and asking for help or being mentored, and how, as a leader, you're both flattered, but I suspect that causes you to look at the employee differently. I know in my own corporate career, there was, I kind of felt like I wasn't being seen. So I went into my boss at one point in time while I was making that meteoric rise to the glass ceiling, by the way. And I said, a year from now, I want this job over here. And I want you to help me get that job. These are the traits that I believe are my strengths, and these are the specific accomplishments. These are the areas I need to work on. Got to be honest about it. Are you willing to do that? And the person said yes. And I would go in quarterly and say, you asked me to do X, Y, and Z, and I did it. How did I do? And it really, it was a very interactive process, but it started with me coming in and I wrote my own review, coming in and saying, this is who I am, this is where I want to be. And each of you have talked about that kind of that mentorship piece. You were being mentored or you've mentored others, and the criticality of it, of really just taking control of your career. And I mean, Karen, you talked about the money aspect of it. That's important too. I mean, we all have, kind of scales. I think of the justice scales, the blind scales of what keeps you there, what causes you to leave. And it's so important to always know where you are. So if it's time to go, go. And if it's time to stay, stay. So just general leadership skills. And you've kind of talked about a lot of different things. And because of the work I do, my ears have picked things out. But if you had to say these are the 3 to 5 leadership skills that you would encourage somebody else to acquire or to develop, I mean, empathy came up, hard work came up. So I'm not even sure who was going to go first this time. So Karen, what would you say? And I just, 3 to 5 is just a number. It could be one.
Sure.
Last time somebody had one, but it was an important one, or it could be more. So take it away.
Yeah, it's I do want to just note that I think this is what Jules and I and Diana, what you're also mentioning, this is sort of purpose driven, right? If you're in a purpose driven environment, it doesn't seem like your 60 hours a week is all work, and I can't imagine, well, I know, I mean, come on, Descanso Gardens is like the most amazing, beautiful place to work every day. And I'm blessed to have a similar environment where, and sometimes you forget about that, which is what's around you, what's the environment that is around you that stimulates you. It does compensate for the crazy hours and the budget challenges and those really rough days, that are compensated with really days of joy and blessing. As far as those leadership qualities, it was years ago. I think I was provost at the time, and I had, or maybe it was just when I turned president, I had sort of this. Yeah, it was during COVID. That's what it was. It was during COVID, which really tested our leadership in new ways. And I call it sort of leadership with her. So humility, empathy, and respect. And humility is like one of those things that, again, I think is really important for like the leaders and mentors that I've encountered, and whether they're my direct bosses or on the peripheral, or aspirational, there's a level of humility that, I can pick up on and that I've seen, and that to me is really important. It kind of opens yourself up to leading others, but also, creating a dynamic, amongst teams, that it doesn't feel so top down. I'm so not top down, for better or for worse. And we've talked a lot about empathy already, and that's a really, of course, important, attribute, I think, when it comes to people and understanding, and trying to make sure that you've got the ability to connect with people in a real meaningful way. And then respect is just, especially when there's conflict, right? Is being able, which is one of the toughest things that I've dealt with, and trying to get better at, is conflict resolution when it does happen. And right now in higher education, there's a lot of conflict, that we're dealing with externally, and challenges that it trickles, to inside the institution. But respect is critical, to sort out those differences.
Two comments. One, Karen, those 3 that you identified, I would say are more predominant in women leaders than they are in male leaders, which is important. Doesn't mean that men don't have them.
No.
I think great male leaders do have them. great leaders, period, do have them. But in terms of kind of, as you said, purpose-driven, being strategic about your career, it's also about what are your relationships with the people around you. And the second is, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it offline, there's two schools of thought. There's conflict resolution and conflict management. In my line of work, I'm an advocate of conflict management. Now, conflict resolution is something like Jules and Karen both ask for vacation on the same date, and the policy says first person who asks gets vacation. That you can resolve that. But most conflicts these days are based on values, history, race, ethnicity differences. And so it's how you manage to the win-win. But that's just my little, I always
Oh,
have to,
you're so spot on. That's so true, Diana.
because I feel
Yeah.
so strongly about it. And I've
Yeah.
actually worked through groups on two issues, one about abortion and one about gun violence. And it's very interesting.
Wow.
Anyway, Jules, I'm sure that you would adopt everything Karen said. And what would you add to
Well,
or how would you?
I would absolutely say, and it's interesting that her is HER, her. I've
Yes.
never heard that before, but I'm going to adopt it. But I think the most important quality is in fact communication. And I'm going to quote my grandfather, who used to say this to me when I was little. He would say to me, "You have two ears and one mouth for a reason."
Mm.
And so
Oh,
I
I
think
love
it's
that.
very, very important as a leader to spend more time listening than talking. Now, we do a lot of talking. I'm at the head of the organization, so of course I'm doing presentations and I'm doing a lot of presentation talk. I don't mean that when I'm talking about, using my mouth, but I try to spend much more time listening than I do talking or explaining why something is some way. I think that's also helpful with conflict resolution or management, or really at the end of the day, people want to be heard. And if you can
Yes.
make somebody feel heard, you're almost all the way there, really, in my estimation.
I've written two books on communication, and one of the chapters is listening, asking, and telling. And sadly, too many leaders do too much telling and not enough listening and asking. And I completely agree with you. If you start there, people feel heard. And when people feel heard and embraced, and you follow the her, you show humility, empathy, and respect, people are motivated, and motivated employees are more productive. I mean, it's a great business proposition. Boy, this is a great conversation. It's like, it's kind of, I'm loving, the next generation of leaders who actually made it. As even though I did have a lot of success in my own career, women were not, they were at the dawn of becoming presidents and CEOs. And
Mm.
by then I had decided that my passion was in being a leadership consultant, basically, and also strategic. I do a lot of strategic planning. So what haven't I asked you that you want to talk about? Jules first and then
Oh
Karen.
boy.
That you think is important for our listeners. It's all about leadership. This year is Leaders on Leadership.
Well, I think we have touched on this, but I think it's really important for not only not to be afraid to make mistakes as a leader, but also to be willing to admit when you're wrong. It's not just about making the mistake, but being transparent about what mistake you may have made. I think that's just very, very important. So that you have the respect of the people that work with you, when you've made a mistake.
Do you have an example you're willing to share with us?
Let's see. No, I'm perfect. I never make mistakes. Yeah, I people that I leaders that I had been mentored by, I had received some advice that said, hire slow, fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to make sure you have all the right people around you. Furthermore, for you to be a successful leader, you have to have all the right people around you. Successful leaders is not in a vacuum. You have to have the right people. And I want to say that, firing people is hard. But early on in this role, I've been here 9 years, I think I was doing it the other way around. I was I was
Mhm,
doing it the wrong way around. I was hiring fast and firing slow. That's no
mhm.
longer the approach that I take. When you don't have somebody who's being successful, everybody is miserable, by the way. So I would say that is a mistake, an early mistake I made early on is
That is
thinking
so
I
important.
could just mentor and fix a problem when it was so clearly
Hmm.
not good, not the right match, not the right fit. You think about the person. When you're thinking about the person, you don't want to necessarily sever a relationship. But I think it's important to be successful to have that right team. And so to be just a little more methodical when you're bringing somebody on board and then using that 90 days if it's not the right fit. And I don't want to make it seem like I let go of a lot of people because but there was an instance where I let it go on way too long.
Yeah, that's so critical. It is so critical. And there's also, it's about skills and competencies. So you know who you are, you know what you're capable of doing. And when I love the visual I had is you're the sun and you've got the solar system around you. You hire to your weaknesses essentially. Who do you
You
need on
do.
your team that's going to complement you? But it's based on skills and competencies. And it's interesting, and maybe it's because of my background as an employment lawyer, but I have facilitated the termination of a lot of people, but I've never felt like I fired anyone. I always felt like they fired themselves because I'm an over communicator. I was very specific. I gave them opportunities. And there's still it still hurts on a very human
Human level.
basis, but I became a Zanger Miller facilitator in one of my jobs. And one of the adages is focus on the issue, situation, or conduct, not the person. And
Mm.
it's a it's something to grapple with. By the way, they say behavior, but I don't use behavior. I use conduct just because behavior is kind of, to me, a subjective word. Um, and again, that's my employment mouth talking. But
Yeah.
that's a tough skill to impart to do that, and yet so critical because you said it, Jules. Everybody knows when somebody's not performing, and I mean, I remember feeling that way, and then you feel like, what am I, chopped liver? I'm overperforming here, and this person over here is not, and yet we're essentially getting paid the same amount of money or whatever the measurement of success is, and sometimes it is money. So I'm glad to hear you say that because
Yeah, it's interesting that you don't look at, I don't know 100% know what you think about behavior, but I have over time changed a little bit about the way I interview people. And I
Mhm.
do interview, of course, if I'm interviewing somebody, their resume has the skill set on it, right? Like they have the skill set I'm looking for. But I think interviewing for personality and fit is like very important. And it's a shift that I've made over the years because you can you can teach a skill. You cannot change a personality. If somebody is coming in with a can-do attitude and is very open, that is somebody that I want to have on my team, even if maybe on the resume only 80% of the skill set is there. Because I have found that now that I approach it that way, I've had no problems.
Well, so way back when, I was very fortunate in my career because um, this is when I was at Southern California Edison Company, and because I came in as a lawyer and then did the meteoric rise. But my first HR job, we worked on skills and competencies, and we worked on skill-based hiring. And this was really the result of having had a class action of discrimination against women and people of color. And so the theory is your past performance is the best predictor of your future performance. So if you're looking for someone to take the initiative, the question would be, tell us about something you took the initiative on in the last 6 months. What was it? What was your suggestion? What was the outcome? And you can really get down. I mean, okay, now I'm at Times Mirror, and that question was used for someone who was going to be the assistant to the then CEO. And one person said, happened to have been from the LA Times, because Times Mirror was at the enterprise level, so it had 26, companies in different areas. And one person said, well, I noticed that the Xerox machine was to my right and people had to walk around it, so I had it moved. Well, that's taking the initiative. Somebody else said, well, I noticed that there was this NCR form we were typing and I just reduced it to a computer document. That's also taking the initiative, but that person would get a higher rating. And then the last person, sadly, who happened to have been my assistant and got the job, which was, well, I was in, the HR department, and I noticed that there were all of these files by company as opposed by subject matter. And so we were unable to learn from one another. So I took it upon myself to redo the entire filing system. So there was kind of cross-fertilization of ideas. That was, of course, the best idea. And as I said, among other answers, she ultimately got the job. So there is a way to do it. And again, I think about it as a labor lawyer, you have to be really careful to avoid being challenged on it. I mean, bluntly. So I guess for me, that split part of my brain was always very helpful because I knew what I could and could not do from a legal standpoint, but also from a person standpoint. How do you get to the right answer in a way that is legally defensible, I guess. So sorry. Okay. But thank you. That is so true. People often don't, hire too quickly and it's so much easier to hire the right person for the job than to have to terminate somebody. Okay, Karen, what haven't I asked you that you need to tell us?
I think I'll take kind of building on what you both were conveying just now. I think there's I want to say the word stewardship, which is something, especially in our purpose-driven nonprofit world, it kind of puts you out of the, because those personal relationships are tough. Trust me, Jules, I've done that 2 or 3 times already. In a short amount of time, I'm learning to look a little more intensely, not necessarily at the annual reviews, but like literally like every 2 to 3 months is really evaluate what's happening with the organization, what's happening at the executive level, what's happening at what I call the shared leadership level. What does this organization need, and how do I adapt? How do we adapt to what the organization is in need of? Because there are 2 or 3 specific roles that were really quite pointed towards a specific job description that no longer are relevant. So, unfortunately, those roles don't exist anymore because we had to pivot into a new direction. And that is that's stewardship. It's like putting the organization first and making decisions around that. And that's really, really difficult to do. But if we don't adapt and we don't lead that adaptation, what's the alternative is not good. It festers and things can die. So yeah, and I think Jules, probably you've experienced this too. It's that dynamic amongst your leadership team. And even if one is off, everybody else is having to compensate for that. And then resentment builds up and, so there's a lot of that constant, evaluation and looking at what does the organization need is, I think, a lot of what we have to do these days because things are moving so fast and the world is presenting, ginormous challenges that require that constant look at need. I think more so than many years ago.
So I hate to say this, but it's 10:43, believe it or not. So you two are brilliant. I'm so happy to have had this conversation because you get it. What can I say? Whether you realize it or not, other people realized it and you gave you the opportunities, and obviously you were both succeeding. So what if people want to reach out to you? Is the best? I know you're both on LinkedIn. Are you in there by your name, by some other designation?
I'm in there by my name. Yeah.
By name? Okay. Yeah. And that is Jules Rooke, R-O.
You know what? No, I probably should go into LinkedIn and change it to Jules Rooke because everybody calls me Jules, but it's in there as Juliann. And I
Mhm.
commit to by the end of the week going in there and changing it to Jules.
Yay! And Rooke is Rooke, and Karen,
correct.
I know Hofmann is a little bit. Spell your surname because that's a little bit different from.
Yeah, it's a German thing.
Yeah,
Hofmann.
yeah, one F and two N's.
That's right. And then yeah, it's on LinkedIn that is, and then also if you are on Instagram, you can follow me at President Hofmann at Art Center. So that's another option too. But yeah, and email is there, so it's Karen.Hoffman at artcenter.edu if you're happy to. But yeah, LinkedIn's always the best.
Yes,
And
and I have to say, because I apologize, next month I am on vacation, and what we're going to do is rerun our very first episode with Chris Edmonds and Julie Winkle-Giulioni, and it is the nexus between career and culture. And I want to thank all of our listeners. If you were not able to listen to the whole thing or would like to hear it, it will be uploaded onto YouTube later today. I think that if you are mentoring females, if you are female interested in moving into senior leadership, probably listening to it again and asking some questions. There are so many nuggets in here that you probably have to listen to it more than once. So thank you, Karen Hofmann, President of ArtCenter College of Design. Thank you, Jules Rooke, CEO of Descanso Gardens. Great conversation, and best to both of you. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. If you have any recommendations, feel free to email me, Diana at DianaPeterson-More.com.